Brittany.
Hello, Rachel.
So today I wanted to talk about the importance of a well-rounded education. And I thought of this because a lot of times we wonder when we're in school, why do I need to learn this? Like, if you're more of a creative person, why do I need to learn algebra?
Yes.
You know what? I'm never going to use this. Or if you're like kind of a mathy, sciencey person, why do I have to read this book and learn about literature? Why do I have to,
write this haiku?
Yeah. Why do I have to do this when it's not relevant to what I'm interested in? And I will tell you. So the reason that someone might have to learn algebra when they're interested in, say, writing and the arts and literature and history is because it prepares you not just for a job, but for life. And math is very important when you get to manage money, for example. You're going to have to be able to understand what 20% off means at a sale. That's just very basic
Important knowledge for me.
Yeah. So not only, it just prepares you for life, to live a more enriched life where you understand more of the world around you, because all of these subjects are going to come into play in some way or another. And the other thing is a well-rounded education where you learn about all different subjects. It fosters curiosity. If you take the right mental attitude, if you're open-minded to everything that you're learning in school, then you can figure out maybe that you're discovering something that you didn't know you were really, really interested in. So rather than approaching algebra or whatever it is that you don't like with a negative attitude, like, why do I have to do this? I would encourage you to keep an open mind, and you may discover a hidden talent or aptitude that you didn't know you had. So I think that's really important. Also, it helps your brain think about things from different perspectives. And a well-rounded person that's pretty important for when you get to be a grown-up. Yes. And I'll give you some examples, some real world examples. A doctor, for example, if you want to be a doctor or a nurse growing up, you might think that you need to really, really focus on science and biology and those kinds of things. And like all of the reading in the literature is a waste of time. But it's not, because do you know what doctors really, really, really need?
Handwriting skills. If you've ever seen a prescription, lots of scribbles.
That is so true. But also communication skills. A doctor, it's really important that a doctor be able to communicate with patients. Good news, bad news, any news, instructions. So it's very important for a doctor to take those English courses seriously, because understanding literature and how writers communicate, understanding how people communicate, helps their brain figure out how they should communicate with empathy to their patients. So that's just one example.
It makes me think of lawyers, too, in that lawyers are very logical and they're so good at it. I work with lawyers. But lawyers are not always the best writers, which is good for me, because part of what I do in my work is I take what lawyers know that I don't know, and I make it where people can understand. So I get to be the writer for them. But a lot of them, I think, focus so much on the logic and the litigating, which is, we need that. But the writing skills aren't always there.
Yes. And also, speaking of lawyers, there are lawyers that do things that have to do with science, like environmental science or malpractice, where they have to understand the science of medicine in order to make a case if a doctor has done something wrong. So a lawyer really needs to know science and math and all that too. Another good example, an engineer with business knowledge. Now, who do you know that's very, very wealthy, that's an engineer, that also understands business pretty well? I would say Elon Musk is a pretty good example of that.
Could probably sometimes be a better communicator. He doesn't always win friends over, but he's a very good, businessman.
Yeah, he would not be as successful in life, I would argue, if he just knew engineering and science, but he didn't understand business. also, because he's parlayed his engineering into a really, really successful, like several businesses. So that's really important, just to be able to understand all these different fields, because they all come into play in some form or fashion in everyone's life. And another thing is, sometimes in the job market later in life, you might have to adapt. In other words, the skills that you've really worked on, like the market might fall out from under and there might be no jobs in what you're interested in. So you might need to pivot and learn some different skills. A lot of people, do you remember when people used to say, learn to code, learn to code?
Yes, that was the thing.
That was the thing when they were attacking coal miners in like West Virginia, I think, is when they were trying to kind of get rid of the coal industry because it's like dirty, whatever. For whatever reason, the coal industry was attacked. Mm-hmm. And the thinking was, well, what are those coal miners going to do for a job? And everybody said, well, they should learn to code, and it was kind of a pejorative, kind of insulting. But I mean, it brings up a good point that you may need to pivot and try a different job. And if you've got a well-rounded base of knowledge, then you've got a little bit of a leg up as far as learning new skills. You've got a base to draw from. Yeah. So this has kind of come up in my homeschooling. My son Wiley is very talented in math and science, but I have taken upon
he always has been. I remember from when he was a little boy.
Yeah. Both of my boys are really smart that way, but I have decided to teach him what I know about Shakespeare, and it's been so much fun for me. I actually studied Shakespeare at Oxford University, so I'm a bit of a Shakespearean. Yeah,
I've known Rachel for like 12 years, and this is the first I'm hearing. That's so fun.
We'll get into that a little bit more in another episode that we're going to record shortly about travel. But I learned a lot about Shakespeare, and I know that Wiley is probably not going to become a Shakespearean scholar. I mean, maybe. But so I am basically teaching him just the gist of a bunch of plays, teaching him what a sonnet is. And one fun thing that I'm doing is we're picking out the most famous line from the most famous Shakespearean plays. And why is that line famous? And what it tells you about the theme of the rest of the play.
Okay.
So that's a way to kind of give him a high level just interest, because a lot of times that's all most people remember culturally about Shakespearean plays. Yeah. Like, for example, if I said Hamlet, do you know, I'm putting you on spot a little bit.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody knows that. So like culturally, it's good to kind of get those references, because someday in some conversation, he's going to look like a real smarty pants. So anyway, that's just my fun little example of teaching my mathy, sciencey kid Shakespeare. And I think it's going to help him. I think he's enjoying it quite a lot.
Well, that's, I think that's the problem. And I've talked about this a lot of times. I didn't finish college, which I did go to a lot of college. So it's not good to say I skipped it entirely. That wouldn't be honest, because I actually only had a few classes left. But the reason I left is because I had I had all the knowledge I needed to go out into the real world. But it's funny you say that, because what I didn't do was math or science, which I've never needed. But what I did do later on, when I was, again, I keep like almost saying my age and being like, I don't need to do that.
Oh, don't say that.
But what I did is there's this teacher who used to film all his classes. I think he was like UCLA, and he used to film every one of his math classes. So all those math classes I missed out on in college, I took those courses through him on YouTube. And I found myself loving math. I was like in my room just doing math for fun. And I was like, this has never happened before, because I never found a teacher that sparked that interest. And I still will admit I've never used any of that in real life. But
that's amazing.
But it was a hobby. And I think, part of what you're saying, I keep thinking about YouTube and Khan Academy. And I'll be honest, I have learned so much about, I'm a bread maker, and I didn't start that up during the pandemic like a lot of people. I just did it after because I'm very into health. I say as I ate a pack of donuts last week, but I try to be very much into health. But so every Friday, in fact, we're filming this on a Friday, and when we're done filming, I will be going and I'll be making my weekly sourdough. But I learned that from social media. I learned that from Instagram and TikTok. And so, TikTok works through algorithms. And so the more you start watching certain videos, the more it shows you similar ones. I decided this year I was going to become a plumber.
Ooh, that's a skill.
Well,
that's a great skill.
So what happened was I wanted a new shower head. And so I got a new shower head. The first one, I think I almost broke my shower, but the second one worked. That being said, my kitchen sink is now spraying in all different directions. So we didn't strike a win there. But it was really fun to learn this, and it was practical. Yeah. So am I going to use this as a writer? Probably not, but it's a useful skill. Though. It's a good human skill to learn. And so I think we forget that there's other things. And I think one of the problems with college, this is why I brought this up, is, in college you have a major, you have a concentration, and you do get to take elective courses that are kind of just whatever you want to take. But we get stuck in that box and we forget about the other things, and where it's great to become an expert. I say expert lightly because I think experts sometimes think nobody's an expert 100%. But I think we forget nobody knows everything. I mean, except for us. No, I'm kidding.
Wow.
But I think we forget. Yes, I think we forget that there are so many other skills that are going to be helpful to be a well-rounded human, not just in your career, but in life in general. So I really like this topic. I know we're running short on time. I don't know if there's anything else you wanna mention.
Well, you sparked something that, I just want to go back to when math was a hobby for you. I think mindset. I think it's a different mindset that you bring when you're doing something for fun. And I just want to go back to being open-minded. Even if you're in your studies, if you can kind of trick your brain into being curious and thinking of all of it like a hobby and with curiosity, then I think it makes everything much more easy and much more fun.
Yes. So never stop being curious. Never stop wanting to learn. I think it's the most important thing. Well, we will leave it there. Some homework for you guys after this episode is maybe try something new to learn. That maybe you see that it helps you in something you're already doing, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just kind of a fun new thing. And maybe as a family, this is a good activity. You each pick something for the week and then or the month, and you go and learn a little bit about it. And a really fun project people are doing now, they do that and then they make a fun PowerPoint presentation. And then they'll do what they call PowerPoint parties, where maybe for a family night, you get together and you each present, this new thing you learned. Just an idea for you. You don't have to do it, but I know that that's very fun. Yeah. So we will leave it there. Please, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. And until next time, Rachel, we will talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.